Researching state statutes. The environment is protected by state as well as federal statutes, and researching the laws of a single state are very similar to researching federal statutes. State statutes are published the same way as federal statutes, first in slip law form, then chronologically as session laws, then incorporated into a subject arrangement as a code. Codes can be official, that is, either published by the state itself or published under contract with the state, or unofficial. That means created by a commercial publisher for the purpose of making a profit. And codes can be annotated or unannotated. One interesting difference between some state codes and the federal code is that some states assert a copyright in their codes, while federal publications are exempt from copyright. When dealing with the laws of one state, you'll usually want to start with a secondary source for that state or that state's code index. But when you are dealing with the laws of many states, especially when you need to deal with the laws of all 50 states, there are much more efficient ways to structure your research than to search each state individually. Not only may lawmakers from different states choose different language to regulate the same thing, there are variations in names and numbering systems of state statutes. For example, Massachusetts calls its session laws the Acts and Resolves, and its code is the General Laws. Both the Acts and Resolves and the General Laws use the chapter as the major subdivision. California, on the other hand, is a nominative code state, identifying each major subdivision by name rather than number. So instead of being divided into titles like the federal code or chapters like Massachusetts, there are 29 separate codes, and there are statutes involving environmental law in the California Public Resources Code, the California Health and Safety Code, the California Fish and Game Code, the California Water Code, the California Government Code, and even the California Penal Code. One way that states sometimes work together to minimize conflicts between state laws is through the process of uniform laws. Uniform laws are really model state statutes, which individual states are free to adopt in their entirety, in part, or not at all. States that have adopted a uniform law, or parts of it, often look to interpretations of that statute from other states that have adopted the same law. The publication that sets out uniform laws, which states have adopted them, and case notes interpreting the statute is a Thomson Reuters publication called Uniform Laws Annotated, which is available on Westlaw. There's a link to ULA at the bottom of the Tools and Resources links on the Statutes and Court Rules page, but the easiest way to get to Uniform Laws Annotated, or any other book you know the title of on Westlaw, is to just begin typing the title into the search box and clicking on the title when it appears in the Looking for This section. The uniform laws in Uniform Laws Annotated appear online in the same order they appear in the print volumes, where they are organized by general topic. The Uniform Transboundary Pollution Reciprocal Access Act appears under Family, Matrimonial, and Health Laws, while the Uniform Environmental Covenants Act appears under Civil Procedure and Remedial Laws. The advantage of coming in through the list of titles is that it takes you to a table of contents for the uniform law. The first link, called Refs and Annos, begins with a table of jurisdictions where the act has been enacted, along with citations to where it can be found in the individual state codes that have enacted that law. And there's also other notes about the act as a whole further down on that page. The sections of a uniform act have the same types of resource references as any other code on Westlaw. There's history, citing references, and notes of decisions, although these notes of decisions can come from a variety of states, any place that has enacted this uniform law. Another way to get access to many states' environmental statutes at one time is through something called 50-state surveys. Westlaw has two collections of 50-state surveys in its secondary sources collection, one of regulatory surveys and one of statutory surveys. You can search all of the surveys or just one particular subject. I often find it easier to browse the table of contents. The 50-state surveys on environmental laws are divided under the topics of biotechnology, mine operation and safety, and pollution. Let's take a closer look at the 50-state survey on operational permits for mine safety operations. Before we look at the PDF that is linked to at the top of the document, I want to scroll down a little bit to show you these hot links to the various state statutes relating to the topic of this survey. The PDF itself does not contain hot links to the code on Westlaw, but it does make it easier to compare one state with another by summarizing the provisions in addition to providing the citations to specific statutory sections. Lexis also has 50 state surveys of statutes and regulations. These surveys are grouped under the topics of energy and utilities law and environmental law. This 50 state survey on brownfield statutes and regulations discusses federal law first, then has a general overview of some state options, followed by detailed information in this state-by-state table with links to the relevant statutes and regulations. While Bloomberg Law does not have a separate collection of 50 state surveys, many of the guides in the Analysis and Portfolios section of the Environment and Safety Practice Center will have chapters on individual state programs, which will provide an overview of the law on that topic for each of the states. Another source that sometimes proves helpful when looking for laws from many states is the subject compilation of state laws available through Hein Online. You can search the database by titles or subjects, but for most comprehensive results, just use a keyword search. On a word of warning, this system does not run automatic equivalents for plurals. You can also browse the subject headings used. Linking to the subject heading water pollution gets 56 results. These can be law review articles like this one, which has a hot link because this article is available on Hein Online. But it could also be a reference to a book or an online database that includes a 50-state survey. The compilation will tell you whether the referenced work contains citations only or if it actually includes the referenced statutes.